The Caldwell estate stretched over acres of pristine land, surrounded by towering iron gates and trimmed hedges that seemed almost too perfect to be real. To outsiders, it looked like paradise, a fortress of wealth and power owned by Richard Caldwell, one of the country's most influential billionaires. But for 8-year-old Ethan Caldwell, the mansion felt less like a home and more like a gilded cage. Everywhere Ethan went, bodyguards shadowed him. Tutors drilled him in piano, French, and mathematics. Even his playtime was scheduled by assistants. He was watched, guarded, and protected, but rarely loved. His father, consumed by his empire, was always too busy for bedtime stories or soccer in the yard. The one person who filled that emptiness was Maria Alvarez, the family's maid. Maria wasn't rich, nor was she highly educated, but she had something far more valuable: kindness. She had been hired 2 years ago, and from the very beginning, she treated Ethan not like a billionaire's son but like a child who needed care. She brushed his hair when he was too sleepy to do it himself, patched up his scraped knees when he fell from his bicycle, and, perhaps most importantly, listened when no one else did. To Ethan, Maria was more than staff. She was the closest thing to a mother figure he had. That chilly autumn evening, Maria was carrying a basket of freshly folded laundry across the back garden. Ethan was nearby, chasing a soccer ball across the trimmed grass, his laughter ringing through the crisp air. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. Everything seemed calm, ordinary, until the screech of tires shattered the peace. A black SUV rolled to a stop just beyond the tall iron fence. The vehicle's dark windows reflected the last rays of daylight, hiding whoever was inside. At first, Maria thought nothing of it. Cars often slowed near the estate, curious to glimpse the billionaire's life. But then, in the blink of an eye, the back door of the SUV swung open, and a masked man leapt out. He moved fast, too fast. Scaling the fence with the agility of someone who had done this before, he landed inside the garden. Before Ethan could react, the man lunged forward, wrapping one arm tightly around the boy's waist and slapping a gloved hand over his mouth. Ethan's muffled scream pierced Maria's heart. "Ethan!" she cried, dropping the laundry as the white linen scattered across the grass like fallen feathers. The bodyguards stationed near the front of the house shouted commands, drawing their weapons, but the kidnapper was already dragging Ethan toward the SUV. Panic spread like wildfire. The estate, usually so secure, suddenly felt wide open, vulnerable. Maria didn't stop to think. She didn't measure the danger or consider her own safety. Instinct took over. She sprinted across the yard, her shoes pounding against the stone path. The kidnapper turned, knife flashing in his hand as he growled, "Stay back." His grip on Ethan tightened. But Maria didn't stop. "Let him go," she screamed, her voice filled with a desperation that surprised even herself. She collided with the man, clawing at his mask, kicking at his shins. Ethan squirmed, tears streaking down his face, his muffled cries begging for help. The kidnapper shoved Maria hard, and she fell to the ground, scraping her palms on the stone. The knife gleamed under the fading sunlight as he raised it, ready to strike. Pain exploded across Maria's arm as the blade sliced through her skin. Hot blood trickled down, staining her sleeve. But she didn't let fear control her. Ignoring the sting, she lunged forward again, wrapping herself around Ethan like a shield. "You'll have to go through me first," she shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. The kidnapper cursed, trying to pry her away. The SUV engine roared as the driver revved impatiently. Time was running out. Then, bang, a gunshot split the air. One of the bodyguards fired into the ground near the kidnapper's feet, a warning shot. Another shouted, "Drop the boy." The masked man hesitated. His eyes darted from the armed guards rushing closer to Maria's bloodied but unyielding grip. For a moment, rage flickered in his gaze, but survival instinct won. He shoved Maria and Ethan aside, bolting toward the SUV. In seconds, he was gone, the vehicle tearing down the road, leaving only tire marks on the pavement and the echoes of chaos. Silence hung in the air, broken only by Ethan's sobs. Maria, trembling and pale, pulled Ethan into her arms. She pressed his head against her chest, rocking him gently even as blood dripped from her wound. "You're safe, Ethan. You're safe," she whispered over and over, her voice cracking with relief. The boy clung to her like she was the only solid thing in his world. Maria, you saved me," he choked out between sobs. By then, Richard Caldwell had rushed outside, his usually composed face twisted with fear he had never allowed anyone to see. He scooped Ethan into his arms, hugging him tighter than he ever had before. But Ethan wouldn't let go of Maria's hand. "Daddy, she saved me," Ethan said, his little voice hoarse but insistent. Richard's eyes shifted to Maria. For the first time, the billionaire didn't see her as invisible staff. He saw a woman who had thrown herself into danger without hesitation, for his son. Her sleeve was soaked in crimson, her face pale from blood loss, but her eyes burned with determination. "Call the paramedics," Richard barked to the guards. But when he looked at Maria again, his voice softened. You saved my boy's life." Maria lowered her head, overwhelmed by the attention. "I only did what anyone would have done, sir." But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. Most people would have frozen, screamed, or run for help. She hadn't. She had fought like a mother protecting her child. The medics arrived quickly, bandaging her wound and urging her to rest. Richard promised her the best doctors, a reward, anything she wanted. For a moment, Maria felt seen, valued in a way she never had before. Later that night, when the mansion was finally quiet again, Ethan refused to sleep unless Maria sat by his bed. She held his small hand until his breathing slowed and his eyes fluttered shut. In the hallway, Richard stood watching. For the first time in years, tears threatened his eyes. His empire, his wealth, his security systems, all of it had failed. But this woman, a maid he had barely noticed, had done what none of it could. She had truly protected his son. What Richard didn't know, what no one knew, was that the truth behind the attack would soon destroy the fragile trust building in that room. The morning after the attempted kidnapping, the Caldwell mansion was unusually quiet. Guards patrolled more aggressively than before, security cameras had been doubled, and Richard had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his son's terrified face, Maria's blood-stained arm, and the black SUV speeding away into the night. For once, Richard Caldwell, the billionaire who prided himself on being untouchable, had been shaken to his core. But what unsettled him even more was the phone call he had received from his private investigator at dawn. The kidnapper wasn't a stranger. Richard sat alone in his grand study, a room filled with leather-bound books and walls lined with awards from his empire. On his desk sat a thick file, one that held the truth about Maria Alvarez. The door creaked open, and Maria stepped inside. Her arm was neatly bandaged, though she still looked pale. She approached cautiously, expecting gratitude. After all, she had saved Ethan's life. Instead, she was met with Richard's piercing gaze, cold and heavy. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Maria asked, her voice soft. Richard gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Sit." The air felt suffocating. Maria obeyed, her hands folded nervously in her lap. Richard pushed the file toward her. The folder slid across the polished wood until it stopped in front of her. "Do you want to explain this?" Maria's brows furrowed. She hesitated before opening it. Inside were photographs, grainy images of her at a diner with a man. Surveillance notes, a birth certificate, police records, and finally, a mugshot. Her breath caught. She didn't need to read the name under it. She knew that face. It was Carlos Alvarez, her older brother. Richard's voice was low but edged with fury. "The man who tried to kidnap my son, is your brother." Maria's heart dropped into her stomach. Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head frantically. "Mr. Caldwell, please, it's not what it looks like. I didn't know he would do this, I swear to you." Richard slammed his fist on the desk, making her flinch. "Don't lie to me. You expect me to believe this was just coincidence? That my maid's brother suddenly appears out of nowhere, trying to take my son? Do you think I'm a fool?" Maria broke down, her voice trembling. "Please, let me explain. Yes, Carlos is my brother. He's been in trouble for years, drugs, debts, gangs. I begged him to stay away from me, from this house, from Ethan. I didn't want him anywhere near here. But he called me last week." Richard's eyes narrowed. "And what did he say?" Maria sobbed. "He said he had a plan. That he could stage something that would make me look like a hero. He said if I played along, you'd reward me, maybe even change my life. I told him no. I told him I didn't want any part of it. But he didn't listen. He came here anyway. Richard leaned back, his jaw tight. So you expect me to believe you weren't part of this? That you didn't help him plan it? Maria fell to her knees, clasping her hands together. I swear on my life, I didn't know he would actually hurt Ethan. When he pulled the knife, I wasn't pretending, I was terrified. I fought him with everything I had. I would have died before letting him take Ethan. Please, sir, you have to believe me. For a moment, silence filled the room. Maria's sobs echoed against the tall walls. Richard stared at her, his mind a storm. He wanted to believe her, wanted to cling to the image of the woman who had risked her life for his boy. But the evidence screamed betrayal. He thought of Ethan clutching Maria's hand last night, whispering, "You saved me." And now he imagined the devastation on his son's face if he knew the truth. "Do you realize what you've done?" Richard finally said, his voice cracking. "You made my son trust you. You made me trust you. And all along, you carried this secret. Even if you didn't plan every detail, you kept this from me. And because of that, Ethan's life was put in danger." Maria's tears fell freely. "I love Ethan like he's my own little brother. I never wanted this. I only wanted a chance. A better life. I was desperate, but I never meant for him to get hurt. Please, don't take me away from him. He needs me." Richard's face hardened. He pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Security. Come to my study." Maria's blood ran cold. "No, please, not in front of Ethan. He won't understand. He'll think I abandoned him." The study doors opened, and two guards stepped in. Richard's voice was flat, devoid of warmth. "Take her away. The police will handle the rest." The guards approached. Maria's cries filled the room as they grabbed her arms. "Mr. Caldwell, please, don't do this. Let me explain to Ethan at least. Don't let him think I'm a monster." But Richard turned away, his shoulders heavy, his eyes fixed on the window. He couldn't bear to watch. Just then, a small voice came from the hallway. "Daddy." Ethan stood in the doorway, rubbing his sleepy eyes. His gaze shifted from his father to Maria, who was being restrained by the guards. Confusion clouded his face. "What's happening? Why are they taking Maria?" Richard froze. His heart cracked at the innocence in his son's voice. He dropped to his knees, pulling Ethan close. "Son," Richard began, his voice breaking. "Sometimes the people we love are the ones who hurt us the most." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He broke free from his father's arms, rushing toward Maria. "No, she wouldn't hurt me. She saved me, Daddy. She saved me." He clung to her waist, sobbing. Maria bent down, her own tears streaming. "I love you, Ethan. Never forget that. I'm so sorry." The guards pried Ethan away gently, his cries echoing through the hall as they dragged Maria out of the house. Richard stood frozen, guilt and grief crashing down on him. He had done what was necessary, but in doing so, he had shattered his son's heart. As Ethan wept in his arms, Richard realized something wealth could never shield him from. Broken trust leaves scars deeper than any wound, and even a billionaire's fortune cannot buy it back. Checkmark moral of the story. When trust is broken, even the purest love cannot heal the wound. Truth, once revealed, has the power to shatter even the strongest bonds.